This week, I went on a trip to hell. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Ryan of Robert Bite, and today I want to talk about Berserk. Berserk is a series that was recommended to me by my brother, and it took me around, I want to say 10 years to actually start reading it. My first experience with Berserk was watching the trilogy of films in the early 2010s, and I didn't finish reading the manga until sometime in 2022. And I just have to say, Berserk is the best manga ever written. And now looking back and reflecting on the story, I realized that there are a ton of different philosophies and themes that can be pulled from its pages. But today I want to focus on Kentaro Miura's use of anticipation and longing for Kasuga's awakening, as well as the overall theme that I took from Berserk, which is life can be a long and winding road. In order to put things into their proper perspective, I need to talk about Guts and Kasuga's relationship and why it's so pivotal to the story. Kasuga is very standoffish with Guts in the beginning, and it's all because she envies his close relationship with Griffith. It isn't until Guts and Kasuga are isolated from the rest of the Band of the Hawk that they finally make a connection with one another. Kasuga opens up to Guts about how she met Griffith and joined the Band of the Hawk. I kind of find it humorous that Griffith was the reason for Kasuga hating Guts's, well, guts? And somehow he was also the glue that ended up bringing them together. Miura, I saw what you did there, and you was cooking. Guts and Kasuga end up being ambushed by the enemy. Guts is forced to sacrifice himself so that Kasuga can escape and rally the troops. They return, and to their surprise, Guts has already slaughtered 100 men. Yeah, Guts is not one to be trifled with. The important thing to note is Kasuga's reaction to everyone finding out that Guts is still alive. This is a complete 180 from how her character was in previous chapters. Later that night, Guts and Kasuga have a conversation by a campfire. This is where Guts alludes to leaving the Band of the Hawk at some point in the future. And when he did that, you can almost feel Kasuga's emotions jumping right out of the page. I mean, just look at that face. Eventually, Guts leaves the Band of the Hawk, and on the morning of his departure, he ends up having an insightful conversation with Judo. This is where Guts says, "I'm no good for her like this," implying that he needs to find purpose in his life before he's worthy of her. And she makes the realization at this time that she doesn't want him to leave. Guts and Kasuga's relationship is brought to the next level shortly after he returns to the Band of the Hawk, in the chapter appropriately titled Confession. Kasuga begins by attacking Guts as if he was an item in a rage room. Seriously, look at this. This is downright therapeutic. The important thing to note in this chapter is that Kasuga has finally reached her breaking point. She mentions that her dreams have all but ended, and it's all Guts' fault. The day he left, she realized many things. Things like, even though she hates Guts, even though she wants to kill him, look, I'ma just say it, she loves him. There, I swear this manga reads like a soap opera, and I love every second of it. She reflects on all the battle scars and sacrifices Guts has made for her, and well, some kissing and touching starts happening. I absolutely love that Miura took the time to add care into these panels, adding a level of realism to this scene. I might as well get my ass on camera for this scene, considering the fact that Guts and Kasuga begin doing, you know, what adults do. The birds and the bees, getting frisky. Doing it? Look, if you don't know what I'm talking about, you need to click off the video right now and tell your mommy and daddy hi for me. Alright, now that I got the funnies out of my system, it's time for us to talk about what might be my favorite part of all of Berserk. Because where else on earth are you going to see a sex scene that conveys such emotional and deep topics and pulls it off as masterfully as Miura does? Guts and Kasuga both have their own separate issues that they're coming to terms with in this scene. Kasuga is wrestling with her feelings of obsession with Griffith, but also her feelings of true love for Guts. Think about the insane pressure of living your life for someone, and then you wake up one day and you realize you're not actually in love with them. And then someone comes along and they make you feel love from the bottom of your heart, but then understandably you feel a little afraid. I think that's something that all of us experience at one point or another, and it hits really hard in this scene. Especially when she mentions that she decides to trust that her feelings are real this time. Hey, Miura was cooking this time, and thank God I am so hungry. Oh my God, that's so tasty. And all while this is happening, Guts is dealing with some inner struggles of his own. Guts finally shares the dark secrets from his past with her, about his childhood trauma and accidentally taking the life of his adoptive father, Gambino. I don't want to get too in depth with Guts right now, but that scene was intense to say the least. One thing that truly captivates me every time I read Berserk is just how real the characters feel. They aren't perfectly written characters, and also they're not characters that just get like one arc of character development and then it's forgotten about. They're flawed and they're constantly growing and changing throughout the story, and it really captivates me every time I read it. Take this scene for example. What makes it so compelling is that Guts and Casca are both scarred people, and their deepest issues are brought right to the forefront and put out on display. Even though they're flawed and scarred, they accept each other for who they are. They stand before each other naked physically, but more importantly, figuratively in this scene. By the end of the scene, I was just trying to figure out how Miura even got us to this point. And again, he was chefing it up with how the scene ends. Guts recalls himself as a young boy applying medicine to his wounds, sitting beside a dimly shined sword. Any Berserk fan knows that Guts is most comfortable with his sword. He can't even sleep without it. It's such a symbolic and a perfect way of conveying that Casca brings him peace. Every time I read this part, I'm like, yep, best manga of all time. And if you disagree, hopefully we can at least agree that this is the best sex scene of all time. Let me just start by saying the eclipse in itself is one big trigger warning. It is known to have a strong impact on readers, so I'm sure you can imagine the level of impact that it has on the characters. From sexual assault to mass murder, hell, Guts even loses an arm. It's graphic to say the least, but it's also crucial to mention this part of the story. I usually describe Berserk as pre-eclipse and post-eclipse, and that's because of the lasting effects that the events had on the characters. Guts' reaction to the eclipse is intense, but it's nothing compared to how Casca internalized it. Guts ends up going for a long run where he ends up reflecting on everything that happened, but because he's the main character, he's forced to move past it pretty quickly. But Casca, well, she's a different story. The easiest way I could put her condition into words is to say that she's regressed mentally to a childlike state. She turns mute and she even exhibits a fear of men. And this is completely understandable considering what transpired during the eclipse. And her fear of men causes a divide between her and Guts, and he can no longer get close to her. And, you know, Guts responds to this like any real nigga would. He dips out and he leaves her behind for Erica and Rickard to handle. No, I'm serious. He leaves her locked up in that cave. And then he goes and heads out on an adventure. We out. Now that all of that setup is out the way, I can really dive deeper into how Miura uses longing and anticipation to make one of the greatest payoffs in history. Casca's awakening from her childlike state is something that I experienced in 5 stages. Now that I think about it, that kind of sounds like AA. Ooh. Stage 1 was around the time where Guts made it back to Godo's house. I was so intrigued with Casca's state of mind. I wanted to know if there were any developments. Would this be a slow process? Maybe she'll regain herself piece by piece. In the end, that wasn't the case, and it basically just served as a chance for Guts to have some character growth. I joked about him leaving her behind earlier, but this was actually an amazing scene with a life lesson presented by Godo about not leaving behind the irreplaceable things in life and going off on your own. And Guts realizes that he was wrong and he vows to never leave Casca behind again. This was great for Guts, but I mean, like I said, there was no development for Casca. Stage 2 was around the time that Guts was leading Casca by a rope like a reindeer or something. And this is where I eventually stopped expecting to have any development for Casca. Instead, I started wondering just when would she come to her senses? Again, this part was a chance to give Guts some character progression, which I'm not mad at because it was expertly done. Guts is having an inner monologue about the difference between simply fighting for survival and the weight that comes with having to protect someone. And as he keeps pondering, he ends up saying, perhaps I was holding on to some indulgent hope. If only we could connect somehow. Even though she was right beside him, he felt the vast distance between them. At this point, I was totally invested in Casca getting better, and Guts' inner monologue made that clear to me. It was so important to talk about the connection that they have before getting into these stages, because knowing the bond that they shared made all the things that Guts was saying hit so incredibly hard for me. At first, I was just sad for Guts, but then I realized I really wanted Casca to be better for her and Guts to be happy together. Stage 3 was when Skull Knight meets up with Guts on the shoreline to give him an omen of things to come. And this is where I noticed I started getting a little annoyed. Skull Knight spoke with Guts about many things, one of which being, you guessed it, Casca's condition. He tells Guts that the King of Elfheim may have the power to help Casca regain her mind. Wait a minute, it might be possible? See, Skull Knight, This is the shit I be talking about, man. You always take me through this cryptic rigmarole. Keep in mind, we have gone through 148 chapters of Casca being in this childlike mental state. And after all of that, we're only getting a maybe. I remember wanting to throw my book. I was so done at this point. But I kept pressing on all the way to stage 4. Stage 4 is around the time where Guts' party went aboard Roderick's ship, and this is where I gave up on Casca's condition getting better. I just accepted the fact that she was like that, and that's just the way it is. Alright, let me not totally BS here. I was still annoyed, but I guess I just adopted an acceptance for the way that things were. And it also seemed as if Farnese could read my mind. When Casca fell off the ship and then Guts again had to pay the price to save her, Guts was in bad shape when he awoke on the ship, and Farnese let Casca have it. She was fed up with Casca's childlike mind state, and also how Casca was so blissfully unaware of Guts' sacrifices time and time again. And you know what? So was I. I think it's important to mention that I am totally aware of why Casca is like that. I'm just speaking from an emotional place as a reader that absolutely adores these characters. We go for such a long time with Casca like that, and I think Miura took total advantage of it in stage 5. Stage 5 starts in the Corridor of Dreams, where Farnese and Shirake are fighting to awaken Casca. The Corridor of Dreams is such a masterclass in storytelling. It really emphasized the fact that the events of the eclipse were just too much for any normal human to experience. Don't ask me what Guts is. I don't have an answer for you. Is he a demon, devil, a suit of armor? All I know is he is 100% that nigga. You feel me? And I almost shouted when Tiny Casca says that she has someone she wants to see. This is one of the most precious things I've ever seen in my life. But things really get going when the moment we were all waiting for finally arrives. Casca's awakening. Now this is where I actually shouted. We have waited a total of 260 chapters for this to take place. I was like, Miura, you beautiful bastard. You got me. And my favorite part of it all is when Farnese asks Casca if she remembers Guts. I know I said this earlier, but look at that face. I didn't need one word to tell me her answer. That expression and the tears forming and whatever the hell those sparkle ball things are. Miura got me. All the questions, any annoyances, the cryptic messages from Skull Knight, none of that matters in this moment. And if anything, it all just made sense. If we didn't have to wait all of that time for Casca to become whole again, this moment wouldn't have brought me to tears the way that it did. When I called Berserk the best manga of all time at the beginning of the video, it was specifically for reasons like this. It's such a powerful moment in the manga. And I'll say it again, Kentaro Miura's use of longing and anticipation for Casca's awakening is what really makes it such a powerful moment in the manga. Even when I just think back on the moment, I start getting just as emotional as I did while I was reading it. It really had a big impact on me. I think Miura was a master in a lot of aspects of writing, but I think the one that takes the cake for me is the use of longing and anticipation. And just when I thought the story couldn't become any more goated, Miura blew my mind with the flick of his wrist. That moment where Guts and Casca are about to reunite and all of a sudden she sees the eclipse made me rethink my life for a second. For real, he caught me slipping. I feel so exposed. And I love the fact that he just had to throw one more curveball at us. I stated at the beginning of the video that there are a ton of themes and philosophies that could be pulled from Berserk's pages. And I think the theme for me, or at least the one I took with me after my first read through, is that life can be a long and winding road. Don't expect anything, enjoy the good times while they last, and keep pressing on, even if you don't know where the road will take you. Thanks for watching. Once again, my name's Ryan or Robert Bite, signing off.